Multicolored buttercream flowers are not hard to make, and in this video, I'm going to prove it with 5 cupcakes by showing you some of the easiest ways to make 2-tone and 3-tone masterpieces. I'm Susan, and this is Weekend Cupcakes. So let's jump right in with our first flower, which is going to be a 2-tone dahlia. We'll be using the Wilton 104 petal tip. I'm lining up the thin end of the tip with one of the seams of the piping bag. And I'm using a coupler to lock the tip into position once the alignment is done. You'll see in a moment why we're doing this. Now that the tip is lined up, fold the bag over and place it in a tall glass. Make sure the thin end of the tip is facing you. I have some dark pink frosting that I made with Americolor's fuchsia and Wilton's burgundy. I'm using a small spatula to place some dark pink on the offset spatula. I find this is the easiest way to get a good amount of frosting on the offset spatula. Place the dark pink right on the seam, and you don't have to put the frosting all the way down to the coupler. I like using the seam as a guide so that I have a straight line, which guarantees that the dark pink will only come out from the thin part of the tip. Keep in mind, the thicker the line of frosting in the bag, the wider the dark line will be on the petals. We'll fill the rest of the bag with some light pink frosting. To make this frosting, I first colored it with Wilton's white, and then I added a small amount of Wilton's pink. I've cleaned off my offset spatula, and I'm going to place a good amount of the light pink on it. On the other side of the bag, I'm going to place some frosting as far down as possible, and I'm going to put a few more scoops at the top of the bag. Once you have the 2 colors, take the bag out of the glass and unfold it. Give the bag a good shake to make the light pink drop further down. This is where your coupler becomes so crucial. It will prevent the tip from getting misaligned. Lay the bag down and push the rest of the frosting towards the tip. Now twist the bag closed, and that's how you'll get a 2-tone effect with a 104 petal tip. For the other elements of this flower, I'll be using the Ateco 80, which is a smiley face petal tip. If you don't have the 80, you can use another smiley face tip, like the 81 or the 79. We're using the same dark pink as on the petals. Just get a good amount on your spatula and place it in the bag. Push the frosting down and twist your bag. For the center of the flower, we'll be using the Ateco 234 grass tip. It will allow us to pipe several stamens at once. This bag will have green, which I made with Wilton's Kelly green and a little bit of moss green. You don't need a lot of green for this flower. Just push the frosting down. Oh, it's coming out. Well, that's what it looks like when it comes out. Let's clean that off. It's difficult to clean this tip because the ends are spiky. If this happens to you, just do your best. I've crumb-coated my frozen cupcake with some of the light pink frosting. We'll pipe the petals all around the cupcake. Place the fat end of the piping tip on the cupcake and the thin end slightly up. As you may have guessed by now, the thin end of the tip will be the outer edge of the petal. We'll do a teardrop motion to make a small petal. Turn your cupcake, place the tip under the petal you just made, and pipe the next petal, repeating that teardrop motion. Just keep doing this until you've gone all the way around. Clean your tip and then start a second row. Start in between 2 petals and tilt the tip a bit higher up. Pipe the petals all around. And there you have your second row, and you can see that your flower has some volume. Next, we'll use the Ateco 234 to pipe the stamens in the center. Place the tip at a 90-degree angle in the center of the cupcake. Squeeze, let the frosting connect, and then pull up very gently. Stop squeezing and pull away. Finally, we'll use the Ateco 80 to pipe petals all around the center. Holding the cupcake towards you, place the tip at a 90-degree angle. Squeeze, pull up, stop squeezing, and pull away. Turn the cupcake, place the tip at a 90-degree angle, squeeze, pull up, stop squeezing, and pull away. and it's okay if the petals are different sizes. Repeat this all around the cupcake. Once you finish the first row, clean your tip and start your second row in between two petals. This is actually a good warm-up for another cupcake we'll be decorating later on in this video. So remember to clean your tip and tighten your bag before starting a new row. Add as many rows as you need in order to get to the center. For the very last row, be careful not to knock over the stamens. Luckily, the tip is curved inward, which makes it possible to get in those tight spots. And there you have your two-tone dahlia. Quite the cupcake, but we're only getting started. Our next cupcake will have two-tone flowers and leaves. Using the exact same bag with the line of dark pink frosting, you can make a completely different flower just by changing the direction of the piping tip, or even changing the piping tip altogether. So this is a Wilton 104. I'm going to change it for the smaller 102 tip. And instead of lining up the thin end with the dark pink, I'm going to line up the fat end with the dark pink. While you screw the tip on, make sure the fat end stays lined up with the dark pink frosting. All right, the bag is ready to go. For the bag of dark pink frosting, I'm going to switch the tip to a Wilton 13, which is a tiny star tip. There we go. We're going to make a bunch of 5-petal flowers. I have a reusable template that I'm going to stick on this very small flower nail. I want to make sure that I stick the flower nail in the center of the template. I'm going to use some double-sided tape to stick a piece of wax paper over the template. I like using double-sided tape instead of frosting because it allows me to see the center of the template. And I'm using wax paper instead of parchment paper because tape doesn't stick to parchment paper. Now I'm going to use my little hack to hold the flower nail. I basically tape 2 paddle skewers together. Let's start with the two-tone bag. Make sure it's tight, and I'm going to do a little test to make sure both colors are coming out. Okay, there you go. Now let's clean the tip. So for this flower, instead of the dark pink being on the outer edge, it will be in the center. Take your flower nail in one hand and place the fat end of the tip in the center of the template. Slightly hold the thin end of the tip up. This will give your petals more of a 3D effect. Squeeze out the frosting and turn the flower nail. Stop squeezing and turning the nail, then pull the tip towards the center. Place the tip under the petal you just made. Squeeze the bag and turn the nail. Stop squeezing and turning and pull towards the center. Repeat this until you have 5 petals. Now, with the dark pink and the Wilton 13 tip, pipe a star in the center of the flower. Hold the tip slightly above the center. Squeeze to make a small star. Stop squeezing and pull away. And there you have your flower. I'd say this is a cherry blossom, except I put a star in the center instead of little dots. I just find the star is easier to do. Now peel the wax paper off the tape and place it on a tray. You'll need to pipe quite a few of these flowers. So stick another piece of wax paper onto the template, tighten your bag, clean your tip, and start a second flower. While I'm making these, go ahead and hit that like button if you're enjoying this video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and have your notifications turned on so you don't miss anything. All right, I ended up with 12 flowers. I probably won't use them all, but at least I'll have enough that I can pick the best ones for the cupcake. These will go in the freezer for at least 10 minutes. While the flowers are in the freezer, we're going to prepare our bag for the two-tone leaves that will be underneath the flowers. I'm using the Wilton 125 petal tip, and I'm going to fill the bag with 2 tones of green frosting. I have this dark green frosting that I made with Wilton's Kelly Green and a little bit of moss green. I also have a light green frosting that I made with Wilton's Leaf Green. I'm going to take a little bit of the light green and add it to the dark green. And the trick is to lightly mix the 2 colors without completely combining them together. Maybe a little bit more light green, Okay, now I'll put this in the bag. I'm just going to squish that down to get rid of any air bubbles. Now let's push it towards the tip. You can see the two different colors and how they're just randomly mixed together. That random coloring will come out on the leaves. I have a frozen cupcake and I'm going to crumb coat it with the light green frosting. I like to make sure that the frosting goes all the way to the cupcake liner. Smooth the crumb coat and clean the edge. Here's the bag with the 125 petal tip and the two-tone green frosting. Before I pipe the leaves on the cupcake, I'm going to show you how to use a petal tip to make a leaf. Let me bring in my trusty cutting board for this. Basically, pipe a straight line while wiggling the tip back and forth. Then turn the tip around and pipe back down that line while continuing to wiggle the tip. When you get to the bottom of the leaf, stop squeezing and pull away. Because I have the two colors in the bag, you can see the two different colors in the leaf. When you fill your bag this way, you don't have any control on how the colors will come out. But I think it looks really nice, and each leaf will look different as you continue piping. For the cupcake, the leaves don't have to be this perfect leaf shape, since there's going to be a blob of frosting on top of them. So my leaves are going to be shaped more like a V. I want the points of the leaves to pop over the edge of the cupcake. 2 leaves on one side and a single one on the other. Now for the blob. I have a bag with some light pink and a Wilton 2A piping tip. Hold your tip at a 90-degree angle above the center of the cupcake. Squeeze the frosting out and move the tip around so the frosting spreads out a bit. Pull your tip up and continue to spread the frosting out until you get a good height. The cupcake is now ready for the flowers, so you can take them out of the freezer. Only bring the flowers out once everything is ready. Otherwise, they can thaw and become very difficult to manipulate. I'm using my tapered spatula to remove the flowers from the wax paper and place them on the blob. Just place them around the bottom and work your way up to the top. You'll have to work quickly before the flowers thaw. I think I'll be able to fit one more. So as you can see, there are small gaps between the flowers. I have a small amount of light pink left, so I put it in a bag with the Wilton 102 tip. I'm going to pipe individual petals in those gaps to make the flowers look fuller. It's a bit difficult to pipe because I don't have a lot of frosting left, so I'll have to get creative with how I hold the bag. Okay, there. So I'm trying to do a little petal like that, and another one there. It doesn't have to be perfect, just fill in the gaps. And there you have your two-tone cherry blossoms with some fantastic looking leaves. Our third flower will be a carnation. Now this is a very frilly and delicate flower, so I'm going to use a modified Wilton 104 tip. I did this by squeezing the tip with some pliers. To give you an idea, here's a regular 104 tip. So we're going to fill the bag exactly the same way as we did for the Dahlia, except this time I'm going to put a very thin layer of that dark pink frosting because I just want a hint of pink on the edge of the petals. Once again, I've aligned what used to be the thin end of the tip with one of the seams in the bag. Place the bag in a cup with the seam facing you. This time I'm using the tapered spatula so I can have better control on the amount of frosting I'm placing in the bag. Put a small amount of frosting on the spatula, spread the frosting up the seam, and keep it as thin as possible. It's okay if the line of frosting is wide, because it's all going to be pushed out through a tiny opening. You just need to make sure it's not too thick. If you need the line to be longer, just add a little bit at a time. If you look through the bag, you can see that the frosting is very thin. In fact, it's barely there. I don't know if you can tell, but my frosting has become quite soft. I'm going to put the bag in the fridge for a few minutes, just to harden it up before I fill the rest of the bag. All right, the bag is out of the fridge and the frosting is nice and hard. Now we're going to add the light pink. Place the frosting on the opposite side. Okay. There. Let me take this out of the cup and hold it with my hand. There, that's much easier. Unfold the bag. Give it a good shake. You can lay it down and push the light pink towards the tip. Then twist the bag shut. So there you have your two-tone bag, and as you can see, it's very thin compared to the bag for the Dahlia and cherry blossoms. Since the dark pink was in the fridge and hardened, I'm going to leave it at room temperature for a while so that it softens up before I start piping. In the meantime, I'm going to crumb coat my cupcake with a light green frosting. Make sure the frosting goes all the way to the cupcake liner. Okay, we're ready to pipe our carnation. I have the two-tone bag and I'm going to make sure both colors are coming out. Okay, it took a while, but there it is. You may not see it too well on camera, but there is a very thin line of dark pink on the edge. This cupcake is going to be the side view of a carnation flower, so the petals will take up about half of the space and we'll add a stem underneath. Place your tip against the cupcake and pipe an M-shaped petal. Leave a space and then pipe another M. We'll do about 5 of these in total. Next, hold the tip at nearly a 90-degree angle and pipe some petals in between the ones you just made. Use that same M-shaped movement, but have the petal fold on top of itself. This will give the flower some volume. Pipe a second row of petals using that same M movement and work your way around to the other side of the flower. As you can see, we're getting a nice ruffle effect. With each new row, slightly change the angle of your piping tip in order to make the petals more and more vertical. Just keep building up the flower with each new petal. Once you have about 3 rows, if you can call them rows, fill in the center a bit more and make some of the petals a bit longer and a little bit less ruffled. For the stem, I'm using the Wilton 12 with some green frosting, which I made with Wilton's Kelly Green and some moss green. Place the tip at the base of the flower, right in the middle. Squeeze, let the frosting balloon out, and move the tip from side to side to really get a big node. Then move away while you release the pressure. I'm just going to add a few more petals on either side to round out the flower. And there's your carnation. So even though I use the same method to fill the bag for the Dahlia and the carnation, by changing the thickness of the dark pink frosting, I got 2 very different effects. For our next flower, we're going to use the most ridiculously easy two-toning method that exists. I have here some Wilton Pink gel food coloring, and I also have some plain frosting, which I lightly colored with the same pink. But it can also not be colored at all. I have an Ateco 123 curved petal tip in a bag, so let's start by turning the bag down. Now here's the trick. You simply put some gel food coloring directly into the piping bag. I'm using a toothpick, but if you have a tube or a drop bottle, you can just squeeze a drop or 2 directly in the bag. And next, we'll rub the bag to spread the color around. I'm going to add a bit more because I want to put some color higher up in the bag. All right, there we go. Now we just add the frosting. Then give it a good shake and push it down towards the tip. Twist your bag and you're good to go. So let's squeeze some frosting out on the cutting board. There, you can see that some of the dark pink is coming out. With this method, the color is not going to come out in any specific pattern. As long as there's some color coming out, you can start your flowers. I'm going to use my flower nail again, but this time I have a reusable rose template, since piping a closed peony is very similar to piping a rose. I've placed some double-sided tape on the template and I'm going to stick some wax paper on top. So we're going to start by piping a cone shape with a number 10 round tip and the plain pink frosting. Hold the tip slightly above the flower nail at a 90-degree angle and squeeze. Let the frosting balloon out until it reaches the edge of the circle on the template. Then gradually raise the tip while you're still squeezing, but slowly release the pressure so you get a cone shape. When you get a small cone, stop squeezing and pull away. Okay, let's put that down so we can get the two-tone bag. Make sure your bag is tight and the tip is clean. We're going to start with a swirl at the top of the cone. Place your tip half on the cone with the skinny end of the tip slightly above the top of the cone. Squeeze the bag and turn your nail to wrap the frosting around the cone. Now that we have a center petal, we're going to pipe 3 petals around it. Unlike a rose where you pipe an arch to open the flower, these petals are going to remain closed against the center petal. Let me just push this up a bit. Okay, so we'll pipe about 5 petals for the next row. Again, keep the petals closed. And just like that, you have your first peony. It doesn't need to be big, so 1 center petal with 2 rows of petals is plenty. Now peel the wax paper off the template and place it on a tray. Place a new piece of wax paper on the template and start a second flower. Pipe the cone, the center swirl, then 3 petals for the first row. Let me tuck that in there. All right, let's start the second row. The curve of the piping tip helps keep the petals closed towards the center, and I'm also finishing each petal by bringing the tip down towards the flower nail. There you have your second peony. As you can see, they look very different. That's the nice thing about this two-toning method. All of your flowers will be unique. So let's do one more. In general, each new flower should come out darker than the last. At least, this has been my experience so far with this technique. All right, we have our 3 peonies and they all look a bit different. We'll put these in the freezer for 10 minutes, and in the meantime, we're going to prepare our bag to make the 3-tone leaves. To make the leaves, I'm using a brand new 12-inch disposable bag, and I'll explain why in a minute. We'll be using the Color Mill 353, which is a large leaf tip, but you could also use a Wilton 366. We're going to put some light green frosting along the 2 seams and then paint a line of gel food coloring down the center. So I've already cut the bag to fit the tip. In order to get a nice straight line down the center, I'm going to fold the bag. Bring the 2 seams together. Make a crease down the center of the bag by pushing down with your finger a few times. So now we have a nice line that we can follow to paint the dark green. The way this leaf tip works is that one of the points has to be on top, and these 2 V shapes are on the sides. So the frosting balloons out and creates the sides of the leaf. I'm placing the tip directly in the bag because it won't fit on a standard coupler, so I'll have to be very careful with the alignment. The pointy part is aligned with the crease that I made in the bag, and the V shapes on either side are aligned with the seams of the bag. Fold the bag down and make sure the tip is still aligned correctly. Place the bag in a tall glass. I have a light green frosting that I made with leaf green and a darker frosting that I made with Kelly green and some moss green. We're going to start with the light green. Put a small amount on a tapered spatula. The goal is to have a tiny amount of frosting along the 2 seams in the bag. The lines can be thick, but they need to be narrow. If you make the lines too wide, they may come together when you squeeze the frosting down the bag. If that happens, the light green frosting will wrap around the dark green, and you won't see the dark green on the leaves. So try to keep that light green as narrow as possible. Turn the glass around and add some frosting to the other side. Okay, so we have our 2 lines of frosting. They're lined up with the V's on the piping tip, and they're not too wide. Before I continue, I'm going to put the glass in the fridge for a few minutes to harden the light green frosting. You don't have to do this, but I'm doing it as a precaution to make sure nothing happens to the frosting during the next steps. The bag is out of the fridge, and the next step is to paint a line of green along that center crease that I created. So I'm going to use a toothpick to get some Kelly Green food gel out of this container, and I'm just going to place it on this cover. Next, we'll put a little bit of that gel on the tip of a food-safe brush. Place the brush right down near the piping tip and use small strokes to add the gel. If you see that there are some spots that don't have enough color, just add a bit more by dabbing the area. Look through the bag and make sure that the gel is at the same height as the light green frosting. All right, we have our green line and our frosting. Everything is still nice and lined up with our piping tip, so we're ready for our dark green frosting. Let me take the bag out of the glass, and I'm going to add a big blob of frosting on the side of the bag that doesn't have anything. Unfold the bag and give it a good shake to lower the frosting. You can place the bag down on the side that has the gel and gently push the dark green frosting down to the tip. So you can see that the green line is lined up with the pointy part of the tip, and the light green frosting is aligned with the two V's on the side. Twist the bag shut and you can rub the gel so it transfers onto the frosting. Now we're going to test it. The light green frosting is pretty thin, so I think the effect will be subtle. Okay, the peonies are out of the freezer and I've crumb-coated my frozen cupcake. Remove the flowers from the wax paper. You can pick them right up and place them on your cupcake. They're not stuck yet, so you can move them around. Once you've found the best position, put a dab of frosting on the bottom of each peony to get them to stick to the cupcake. It's as simple as that. Now, to add the leaves, hold the bag so that the green line is facing up. Place the tip between two flowers. Squeeze and let the frosting balloon out. Then slowly move away while you're still squeezing. When you get the size you want, release the pressure and pull away. If you want to create little veins in the leaf, you can move your tip back and forth. Add a couple more leaves under the first leaf. Repeat this process in the open spaces between the other peonies. You can also add some small leaves in the middle on top. And there you have your peonies. Now, I put quite a bit of gel food coloring in my bag, so the petals on the peonies are pretty dark. Here's a picture of one I did earlier with less coloring, and the petals are much lighter. So, using this method, you do have some control of what the flowers will look like. Our last cupcake will be the chrysanthemum. Similar to the leaves we just did, we're going to use gel food coloring to highlight the petals. I have an Ateco 80 piping tip in a 12-inch bag. We'll paint a line of pink along the two seams in the bag and then add some pink frosting. Let's turn down the bag and place it in the glass. I'm using Wilton's pink food coloring and a toothpick to get it out of the jar and place it on this cover. Put some gel on a food-safe brush. Paint a line along the seam. I find dabbing the brush to add a little bit at a time works best. Let's add some here. There, you can see how much I've put on. Turn the glass around and do the other seam. We just need 2 thin lines. Try to make the lines the same length. All right, we have our 2 lines and they align perfectly with the sides of the Ateco 80. Time to add the frosting. 3 scoops ought to be enough. Unfold the bag and give it a good shake. Then lay it flat and push the frosting down the center. Twist the bag closed. So the gel food coloring ended up getting smudged a bit, but we still have a straight line there, and we have a straight line on the other side. It should be okay. The important thing is that the 2 stripes are still lined up with each side of the tip. I'm going to place the bag in the fridge while I prepare my cupcake because I want this frosting to be nice and stiff. This will prevent the petals from drooping down when I pipe them. I'm crumb coating my frozen cupcake with the same pink as the petals. Make sure to spread the frosting right up to the edge of the liner. Most of the time, I place the cupcake directly facing me, but I really want to see how far away from the edge I'm piping, so I'm holding the cupcake sideways. Place the tip on the edge of the cupcake. Squeeze and pull up until the tip passes the edge of the cupcake. Stop squeezing and pull away. I'm doing it this way because I want the petals to go past the liner, but not too far, and I find this is the best way to see the edge of the cupcake. If a petal breaks, you can clean your tip and pipe right over it. It's no big deal. Keep piping all around the edge of the cupcake. Clean your tip and start a second row. Start your next petal in between two existing petals. This time, pipe straight up, but try to keep your petals short. Stop, clean your tip, and tighten your bag. Then go ahead with a third row. Keep working your way around, getting closer and closer to the center. As you can see, when you look straight down at the flower, you don't see the pink lines. But when you look from the side, you can clearly see those beautiful two-tone highlights. With this little space in the center, pipe a small mound, then pipe a few more petals around it. The last 2 or 3 petals will be piped directly on the mound. And just like that, you have a two-tone chrysanthemum. I hope you enjoyed this video and found these tips and techniques helpful. And if you're really excited about decorating with multi-tone frosting, you won't want to miss this next tutorial that shows 2 different ways to pipe an amazing two-tone rosette. Thanks for watching and happy baking!